But first, the company formerly known as MicroStrategy, now simply Strategy, because hey, it's cleaner, is about to pull off the biggest flex in Bitcoin corporate history. Reports say the Bitcoin stuffed software firm turned Treasury pioneer has officially qualified for a spot on the S&P 500. That's right. Michael Saylor's little let's buy some Bitcoin experiment has grown into an index-level juggernaut. The company crushed its, hey, what's up, Mike? The company crushed its second quarter with $10 billion in net income and ballooned its Bitcoin holdings even further. And when I say ballooned, I mean ballooned, because while most companies spend August sending interns to Staples for printer paper, Strategy spent it buying over 7,700 more BTC. That included one giant haul of over 4,000 Bitcoin, about $449 million worth, scooped up between August 25th and yesterday, September 1st, at an average price of just beneath $111K each. They also added over 3,000 BTC earlier in the month, plus another 430 Bitcoin buy, and even a 155 BTC appetizer back early in August. All in, they now sit on over 636,000 Bitcoin. That's like $47 billion worth purchased at an average cost of $73K a coin. Do we have Bitcoin treasuries, guys? Can we bring that up real quick? If we don't have it, screw it, don't worry about it. So, rub it all in though, Saylor accompanied his latest buy with a photo on X of himself shopping with a shopping cart overflowing with Bitcoin. There it is right there. Boy, it's like you teach some people like AI generation and they just run with it. God bless you, Michael. Now, this is the man, mind you, who turns grocery memes into corporate treasury strategy. But now back on the S&P 500 side of this monster flex, Strategy meets every requirement. Market cap way above the $8.2 billion threshold. Trading volumes over 250,000 shares a day, check. Public float more than 50%. Earnings positive in the last quarter and across the last 12 months, you got it. Or in other words, it checks every single box Wall Street demands. Announcements could come as early as this Friday, and when it happens, it won't just be another ticker symbol, it'll be a billboard saying Bitcoin has officially invaded the mainstream financial system. Because remember, in February, the company even changed its name, so goodbye MicroStrategy and hello Strategy. Because Saylor has been screaming for years that Bitcoin is the best long-term store of value for corporate treasuries. Better than cash that melts from inflation, better than gold that costs a fortune to store. Strategy went all in on a Bitcoin-centric business model, betting on scarcity, portability, and borderless money. And it worked. Now other companies peeking over the fence can study Strategy's SEC filings to see exactly how you can actually hold corporate Bitcoin. And they'll find language like this. We face risks relating to the custody of our Bitcoin, including the loss or destruction of private keys and cyber attacks. They'll also see that most of Strategy's Bitcoin is held with U.S. institutional-grade custodians. But there's still no perfect legal framework. If a custodian goes bankrupt, Strategy could be treated as an unsecured creditor. Meaning, congratulations, your corporate Bitcoin is stuck in court with the office furniture. Still, none of that changes the headline here. Strategy is about to turn Michael Saylor's meme into S&P reality. And apparently, he's going to keep stacking all the way there, one shopping cart at a time. All right, treasure box. You have it up now? There it is. Okay, so really quick, this is Bitcoin Strategies, or BitcoinTreasuries.net. This is the best place on the interwebs to find out what your favorite public companies are doing with their Bitcoin. So you can actually see here MetaPlanet, we got them in 7th, but of course, at the top of the list, we have Strategy. If we click on Strategy really quick here, gang, it'll actually break down all of their holdings, how it relates to their stock price, what their average cost basis is, a whole bunch of great stuff. So yeah, let's take a look here. They even have like a video now. They're always adding nice new features to this website. But if we scroll down a little bit, there you go. Over 636,000 Bitcoin, an average price just below that 74K mark. They're profiting right now in the green over 50%. This used to be much higher, but the Bitcoin prices come back a little bit. Either way, I think it's fair to say they're doing pretty well, and we look forward to seeing them on the S&P 5. All right, let's get back to camera 1 and bring Joe back. Joe, Michael Saylor's company Strategy is officially S&P 500 material after racking up $10 billion in profit, stacking another 7,700 Bitcoin in August. How big of a signal is this for other CEOs who are too scared or still too scared to touch Bitcoin? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really big deal. And My understanding right now is they've met all of the qualifications to join the S&P 500, and it's still pending the committee final approval for them to potentially get in. And it's going to be interesting to see if they do approve strategy or if they don't approve strategy, considering strategy is a very unique company, right? I mean, it's got this tiny business analytics software company and then a absolutely massive Bitcoin treasury, as you pointed out, and as bitcointreasuries.net points out on their website. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm optimistic. I think it's a huge deal if they do officially get included into the S&P 500. One, because I think most people are just blindly saving for the future. And that's, buying the S&P 500 index fund or a Vanguard total stock market index fund or, a variety of different index funds and or target date funds in their, retirement portfolio in their 401k or whichever country you live in, the equivalent of a 401k. And so basically, the entire financial system is trying to construct this beautiful, like diversified portfolio, which in a way is just a kind of a roundabout way to create a good form of money. You're basically saying, I don't know what to invest in, so I want to buy the market and not pick
Right.
anything in particular. And in a way, that's kind of like saying, like, if there's a good form of money that just wasn't debased over time, then I'd probably just save a good bit in that. And so I think strategy being potentially added into the S&P 500 will be huge because it's Bitcoin starting to infiltrate the quote unquote diversified portfolio. And there's kind of these weird, interesting reflexive feedback loops to where, strategy's business model and a lot of these Bitcoin treasury companies' business model is to accretively acquire more Bitcoin by issuing equity, buying more Bitcoin, issuing preferred equity and buying more Bitcoin, issuing other sorts of credit instruments and buying more Bitcoin. And so as the market cap of strategy increases over time, if it's included in the S&P 500 or other index funds that it's already included, well, then that index fund, most index funds are typically weighted by market cap. And so as the market cap of strategy grows, that means these index funds have to buy more and more strategy shares to maintain the position that they want to maintain or that they're designed to maintain. And so I think it would be a huge signal to the future that, Bitcoin is here, it's here to stay, and it's infiltrating, everyone's portfolio practically around the world. And I think it could lead to more and more corporations buying Bitcoin and putting it on their balance sheet.
Yeah, and if strategy were to join the S&P 500, kind of to your point, every pension fund, every index tracking ETF would now have exposure to Bitcoin, whether they like it or not. So it begs the question, do you think if strategy were to be included in the S&P 5, could this be that moment we've been waiting for where Bitcoin just becomes too big to ignore on Wall Street? And maybe we do really start seeing, like kind of what we were just talking about, like we really start seeing that people paying attention to it the way you and I do, or the way a lot of people in our ecosystem do. Because it's like at that point, it's kind of been, I mean, I thought BlackRock was kind of the major validator for me for Bitcoin, but maybe it's this? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, one, I think the BlackRock ETF was a pretty big deal, and we got to remember that I believe Bitcoin is up more than 2x since the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, and I also think that these things just take time, kind of like we talked about it earlier. But yeah, I think this will be an absolutely huge deal for the world and for the S&P 500 and for Bitcoin. I mean, another thing that you have to consider is like we mentioned, the committee has to approve it first, but there's some interesting dynamics at play here where if the committee doesn't approve it and other index funds like NASDAQ QQQ do add strategy into their index fund, which has actually already occurred, then index funds are competing with each other, right? And so index funds want to provide the best risk-adjusted returns to their customers, which are just people buying their index funds. And so if the committee, for whatever reason, decides to make a weird exception because of strategies, it's a unique company like we pointed out, and they don't approve strategy into the S&P 500, well, then other index funds that do include strategy into their fund, if we're right about Bitcoin, well, those funds will probably outperform the S&P 500 over an extended period of time because of how superior Bitcoin is at long-term savings technology. That will kind of encourage maybe the S&P 500 to be like, wait, maybe we made a mistake, or maybe we actually do need to include this in our fund because it's qualifying, it's meeting all the requirements that we suggested or that we have on our guidelines. And so if it's actually, going to outperform everything and it has outperformed everything, then we should have this included in our fund. So I'll be fascinated to see if they do include it. But yeah, I think it'll be an absolutely huge deal for the future of Bitcoin. Now, like, will it be an immediate, are we going to $1 million after, yeah, per Bitcoin after this happens? Probably not, of course. But over the long run, I think it's going to be like a very positive sign. And I think, it's probably going to be a very positive sign for, strategy and Bitcoin treasury companies broadly if it happens.